Hey everyone, I would like to welcome you to the first video in my brand new studio. And what better way to do that than to continue the brand new Fit Complete Bike series. In this video, we're gonna be doing a couple fixes on the bikes, a couple maintenance things, as well as installing a new part on there. So without any further delay, let's get into it. And now we're gonna just start the process of replacing these cables. It's a super simple process. First thing we're gonna do is tighten these barrel adjusters into the gyro plate. This gives us the slack that we need in order to take it out of the brake lever. So we get these tightened in. And I guess while we're down here, I'll double check and see, yep, can pop that out on the gyro. Now pop that out on the gyro on that side. And now we can actually loosen these barrel adjusters back out of the gyro plate so that we can remove them completely from the bike. So there's one. And here is, come on, another. Okay. So now we can move up and do the rest. So now that we've got loose cable ends here, we can tighten this barrel adjuster in as well. We don't necessarily have to do this one because we have enough slack to take it off, but I'm gonna do this just so that it's not something sticking way out of this cable. Okay, now we have enough slack that all we gotta do is align our barrel adjuster on our brake lever. We need to align this nut here and the slot in it with the slot on the barrel adjuster itself, then align those with the brake lever, and that will allow us to pull our cable out. Very, very easy. And cables are uninstalled. We can grab the other ones, the black ones here. Oops, sorry for the camera bump. And do everything we just did, but in reverse order. So we got all of that in there. I will pull this out because I'm assuming these are the exact same length cables, so we're gonna need that pulled out. And then we'll go back down and put them into the gyro plate right there. So there is something to take note of here whenever you're putting cables onto the bike like we are, in that there is a shorter side and a longer side. And when we take a look at it, logically, we want the shorter side to go to the side closest to where it's coming from because it has the least distance it has to go there. And then we can tighten our barrel adjuster into the gyro plate. Then our longer side can tighten into the other side of the gyro plate. Now we can put our gyro cables on. If there is any kind of specific orientation of your gyro, or you want to have a logo facing forward or something like that, pay attention to it. Otherwise, it doesn't really matter. And now we can do any kind of adjustments that we need to get our brakes back to where they were. So let's do up and do that. So upon pulling these brakes here, even with it backwards, we can turn it back the way it's supposed to be. There's just not enough there. So that means that either I didn't tighten these in enough or I loosened this one up here too much. I'm gonna go ahead and tighten these at the gyro plate a little bit more and just see where that gets us. Keep in mind, I'm gonna be replacing the lower cable too, so things could change a little bit more, but I want to keep them as close to what they were as possible because they felt good. Oh, there we go. Okay, so take a pull on that. It feels great. So upper cables are replaced, headset is tight again, bolts are greased, and now we're ready to move down and replace this lower cable, which should be a fairly simple process. Let's go. So step one in the process of the lower cables is pretty much the same as step one in the upper cables, just in that we're going to tighten any barrel adjusters in to get as much slack as we possibly can. We don't need it as much down here because we're gonna actually loosen something that is pinching the cable here and keeping it in place rather than just barrel adjusters being adjusted. I'm gonna go ahead and take off this cable strap because because we're gonna have to put it on again. We'll just wrap that here for now. We can take off our straddle cable just to give us a little bit more room here, and we'll want to figure out some way to remove that cable end as well. We need to give you a little bit closer of a look to see what we're going to do right here. So I went ahead and grabbed some pliers to remove this cable end with here. And once we get that off, we'll be able to continue this process. And to do that, we just need to loosen our straddle cable here, or the bolt that is holding our straddle cable hanger in place. So we're gonna just put the crescent wrench onto one side and grab our 10mm Allen for the other side. Make sure that we are loosening, not tightening. And then we're just gonna loosen the nut on the bottom of that bolt. Loosening that alleviates the pressure on the cable and allows us to pull it out, dropping the cable hanger, and then we can just pull the cable out. Very simple, but now we gotta move forward to show the next step in the process. So next, we just need to take the barrel adjusters out of the gyro tabs so that we can get these cables off. Very, very simple process. Super easy to take this off and put the new cables back on. It is the exact same process in the reverse order, except there's one other step in here that you may have to do when putting on the new cable if you are going to do this. Loosen this barrel adjuster up and take it out of the gyro, and we have a loose cable now. So we can grab our other set of cables and put it around the head tube and then tighten. First we'll put our cable through the gyro tab, and then we can go ahead and tighten the new cable's barrel adjusters into the gyro tabs. You'll want to tighten these all the way in so that they are bottomed out and you have as much adjustment as possible that you could need later. Hope you don't, but in case you do, it's there. So now I'll tighten this other side in quick, and then we will move backward again to continue this process. So we'll see you back there. So the next step in the process would be to grab the barrel adjuster from our old cables. We're going to need this one. If you're getting brand new cables, it'll likely come with one, but you're just gonna put that over your cable inner, slide it onto there, and then on this bike, just gonna slot the inner into the guide and then get the barrel adjuster to go into the guide. So there we have these installed. Now I want to make sure, and you can't see this right now, but I want to make sure, and you should make sure, that in this process, before this point at least, you get the ends of your gyro cables for the bottom into the gyro itself, because you're going to need those attached whenever we go to do the rest of the process. So we grab our cable hanger, we take our cable inner, slide it through the cable hanger. Then we want to make sure that we put the straddle cable underneath the cable inner and into the cable hanger. This kind of holds it in place. Put it into our brake arm, and then this is where we pull the cable hanger forward, bringing our straddle cable tighter, and then we pull the excess out of this cable so that when we tighten it, everything should be solid. And sometimes you may want to loosen this barrel adjuster a little bit so that when you're done with this whole thing, you have a little bit of adjustment that can come out of it in case you pull too hard and you have absolutely no adjustment in your cables, and then you have to loosen it and readjust and go from there. So let's go ahead and make sure our excess is out. Sometimes it could help to do this before you have your spring tension finalized, but in most cases, if you're just replacing a cable, you're not going to have your spring tension loosened unless you do it on purpose. So that is tightened down by hand here. grab our 10 mil, and we're gonna just try to tighten it down as much as we can to keep it in place so that we can then grab our crescent wrench and tighten it the rest of the way. But before we go any further, I'm gonna pull these brakes. Nice. They do still work and everything still feels good, so I think we're solid to keep on tightening this down. Should be good. So I'm gonna finish tightening that up. Before we go anywhere else, I realized there is one more step in this process, in that we have a lot of excess on our cable here that we need to get rid of. So we're just going to find where we want to cut this at. I think I may want to bring it to this side, take a look at where it ends up. And if I'm being honest, I'm the kind of person that I will leave way too much excess on a cable for probably no reason at all before I cut it, and I don't know that I want to do that this time. So we're gonna just go ahead, we're gonna cut this off right here, and that leaves plenty of room between the cable and the frame, if you can see that there. And now we're going to grab our cable end, slide it onto our cable. Hopefully, I'm trying to reuse the previous one, which may or may not work out. But either way, the next step in this process, there we go, got it onto there, is a brand new part for this bike. So let's tighten this cable end onto our inner Park Tool friggin' CN10s right here. Best tool for brakes. So good. So now let's move somewhere where you can see me and talk about this brand new part. So before we get to telling you and showing you what is inside this box, I want to explain a little bit the concept that we're going to have with this series moving forward. So of course I'm going to be upgrading this bike one part at a time, as someone actually might whenever they get a complete bike, and just talking through my experience in riding the bike for real during riding sessions. And with that, I wanted this to be something that you guys chose, which part we would be upgrading. And I'm doing this with Fit and S&M parts. And I thought it would be fun if I didn't know what parts were gonna go onto this bike. So I sent S&M and Fit a list of different parts for each thing. So for example, when it came to the bars, I went on the website and I picked 3 or 4 different handlebars and then different colors, and they're picking and sending from there. So I actually already have all of the parts to upgrade this bike. I just don't know what they are yet. They're all in a box, and that's why this box is here. I had my girlfriend get the part out of the box and then put it into this one so that it could be a reveal for you guys. So in the poll that I put up on YouTube today, people voted for the cranks. This one's a little bit of a gimme, so maybe it's better that it's first, but you know, Fit and S&M only make one pair of cranks, and that would be big box for a little box of cranks. But this is the Fit blunt cranks, or the box that they are in, and I don't have a knife to get this open with. One sec. Shout out to Park Tool with this little flathead screwdriver coming in clutch here. So these cranks are 24 millimeter cranks. They actually come with the bottom bracket, and I just spoiled the size and color for myself here. Oops. But that's okay. You'll see it in a second. This one was a little bit less of a surprise, just because, you know, as I said already, they only make one set of cranks, but the color is an option. So there it is, the cranks, which I realized you couldn't actually see very great right there. The Fit blunt cranks, 165 millimeters in gloss clear. So these are a 24 millimeter crank. The Fit blunt comes from this part right here, and they're made, let's see here. Warning, cranks with sharp edges can cut your ankles and cause bleeding and pain. These are intended to not do that. So we have the cranks. We also have included a bottom bracket, the bolts, sprocket bolts, as well as the cone spacers for the bottom bracket. We've got the spindle and a spacer for it. So in order to install these cranks, we're gonna have to take these old ones off, and it should be a pretty straightforward process, but I'm gonna show you a little bit closer of it. So let's go right down there. Okay, so the first thing I'm gonna do here is loosen the pinch bolt on this drive side crank. Easy enough, don't have to loosen it crazy. Then we loosen the actual crank bolt, and we can take this one all the way out. And with this complete bike and these cranks, we don't actually have a sprocket bolt, so we can actually just take this crank arm all the way off here. So it should just slide off there, pretty easy. I can set both of these aside and drop one of them because that's just what I do. Now we can take the other side out, maybe just a little tap, there we go. So we can take the sprocket here and we can pop the adapter out of it. We may have to use a little bit of force there, but we'll set the sprocket aside and we'll just make sure we catch everything that is gonna fall off of here. So we got one spacer, the cone spacer, and we'll just set those in here. And then we can pull out the crank arm from the other side. Okay, we have officially uninstalled these cranks, and now the next thing that we need to do is take out the bottom bracket. So in order to do that, I take this and I take one of these and I put this into the frame and I tap upward in order to push that spacer on the inside down, which will allow us to get to the bearing on one side. And we can hit this. Oops. The next step in our process is to double check the spacer that comes with the cranks and make sure that it is the correct size for the frame, which it is. All you have to do to figure that out is put your spacer between your bearings, put that under your bottom bracket cup, and just see if they feel like they're the right width. These definitely are on, so the next thing we need to do is install the bottom bracket. To do that, I'm gonna make sure that I take the Park Tool Polylube and I put lubrication in both bottom brackets, or both sides of the bottom bracket tube on the frame. We want to make sure that this goes in the way that it's supposed to the first time. So we're just going to make sure that that is ready. Then from there, we grab our Park Tool bottom bracket press, and I'm going to prep it here by taking one side off. We take everything off except for this little adapter thing. It's made for a 19 millimeter bottom bracket, but it helps no matter what bottom bracket you have. We slide onto one bearing, put that into the frame. Now we take our spacer, slide it onto this piece, grab our other bearing, slide it onto here as well, then put everything back together in the order that it came off so that it is ready to go. One thing you can also do here, once you get it all tightened back on so nothing's gonna fall off. Let's put a little lubricant onto the bearings themselves too, just to make sure that it goes according to plan. Because if you've been riding for any length of time and you've installed multiple bottom brackets, you know that sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. And when that happens, it's rough. So let's get you a little bit better of an angle so you can see these things actually getting pressed into the frame. So while I'm doing this, and it's gonna take me a second, I kinda wanted to ask you guys how you think you'd like to see these videos formatted. In a video with just working on the bike, or a video with riding and working on the bike, a video with new parts and riding and all of it together. I felt like these may get extremely long if we try to install new parts and ride it in the same time, because these sessions, I mean, the last video was over 20 minutes long. This video is probably going to be 20 minutes long as well, just installing these cranks. So I'm curious what you guys' thoughts are on this process. And now we have an installed bottom bracket. And you know what? This might be a good angle to just go ahead and throw the spindle in there. So I'm going to grab the spindle, make sure that our spacer is aligned. Spindle is in. Easy as that. That was awesome. Now, we're going to grab our cone spacers and crank spacers, and we're going to go ahead and toss those on. So non-drive side obviously goes on the non-drive side. Drive side goes on the obviously drive side. So that should be that. We will probably need a couple of these spacers, and I hope we don't need any more than this, because this is all I have. I've never had 24 millimeter cranks, so I don't have any kind of spacers for 24 millimeters. Now let's go back up to a proper angle here. So the non-drive side is pretty straightforward here. We're just going to take the poly lube and put a little bit of lubricant inside the crank on the spindle or splines where the spindle goes, so that it can be as easy of an install process there as possible. The gloss clear on these looks sick. Being able to see welds on parts is just rad. So we put some poly lube on the spindle as well. We already installed that cone spacer on the non-drive side, so it is pretty easy there to keep going with this process. Just make sure it's nice and lubricated, and we're just gonna try to slide this on. Sometimes brand new cranks are a bear to install. It can happen, but we're gonna hope these just go. Okay. I think that just went on very easily, and it did. So now we can take the other bag in this box and grab our crank bolt, which is sweet that it already has a little bit of thread locker on it, and it has a 8 millimeter and a 6 millimeter option for tightening if you look down in there. So go ahead and tighten that down. Not all the way though, because I want to make sure that I have my spindle amount set in here, and I also want to make sure spacing is correct. So let's go ahead and tap that on. So the spacing is solid. I tapped the hammer so everything was bottomed out there, and we have plenty of room there. So now we can go ahead and move to the drive side here. First thing with this, we're gonna go ahead and grab our sprocket, and we're going to reuse the steel sprocket because The sprocket is definitely something that you guys can choose that would need upgraded, and that's also part of this process, is just letting me know which parts you guys want to see me upgrade on this bike. What's next? Is it the bars? Is it the forks? Is it the stem? Is it the sprocket? What do we upgrade next? Now we put the poly lube onto the spindle just like the other side. Grab our spacers, almost drop one of them. Put those onto the spindle, and then we grab more poly lube, put it into the crank arm itself, because that is what helped the other side go on extremely easily. We need to find what is aligned. I think I got it on the first try. Looks good to me. There we go. This is another spot where I want to use poly lube. There's also already some thread locker on here. So can someone fill me in on what happens if you use grease and thread locker at the same time? Does it like open a hole in the space-time continuum? I don't know. But what I do know is that this is in enough that I'm able to tighten it down. So where are we at spindle-wise? It's important throughout this process to just double check where your spindle is at in your crank arm, just to make sure you're not bottoming anything out, or also that you're not taking one side way too far and having to loosen the other side up in the process. So this side has about another 1/8 of an inch that it can go, and then we'll go ahead and come around here and tighten the other side at the same time. And it was at this point in this process, after getting the cranks on, that I realized I should have taken the pedals off before I removed the old cranks. So this is where things can get fun. I think this is the right side, so I have to loosen this towards the back. Oh, thank God. Oh, that was a genuine sigh of relief right there. So we can just tighten this pedal back on here. Now, for another moment of truth. Loosen. Yes. Oh my goodness. I also realized that I forgot to put the chain back on as I was putting the drive side crank arm on, but that's okay. We will definitely get there. When it comes to tightening your pedals, I always reiterate this. You tighten your pedals towards the front of the bike whenever your bike is right side up. So pedals are installed, and I believe this chain, being a complete, this chain has a master link. Being a shout out to Park Tool, we've got a set of pliers right here that will easily allow us to remove the master link and put the chain back on. Master link pin removed, plate removed, one side of the chain taken off, bring it around, and back together we go. That's simple, love it. And we always make sure to put our master link on with our pin so that it wraps around with the opening facing backwards. Boom. Oops. Oh, not boom. Remove. I have a free coaster right now. See? Making sure that the chain is on the driver this time. So there is one other thing that we need to do in this process, and that is just checking the wheels and making sure that they are still in true. So these spokes are pretty tight, honestly. What about the fronts? Yeah, the fronts are pretty tight too. So I think that what they just are going to need, because if we take a look at it here, The rim is definitely in need of a true. But when you consider what has been done on this bike and the fact that these are single wall rims, I'd say that's not too bad. And the fact that these spokes are still tight is pretty good. So all that's left to do is true these wheels, and I will time lapse through that and come back with the finished bike ready for the next session. Dude, that took 5.5 minutes. Front was already so close that if I went any further with it, it's just gonna make it bad. So at this point, we're done. And here we are wrapping up the very first video shot in my completed brand new studio. I hope you guys are as excited for this thing as I am, and moving forward shooting all of my videos to do with bikes and bike maintenance in here. But with this one, we have 2 trued wheels as well as brand new Fit blunt cranks. A little bit about these again. They have a 24mm spindle. These ones are 165mm in length and in the gloss clear colorway. They also come in black and in different length options. We replaced the brake cables with the black ones that originally came with this bike, as well as tightened the headset and, like we said, trued the wheels. So with that, let me know which part I should upgrade next in this complete bike series. We have a session coming forward with this bike, so I'll be riding it, and then you guys can let me know on the riding session video what we should upgrade as well. And between those 2 videos, if there's a battle for what it is, it'll be on the community tab, and you guys have all the say in what is upgraded next on this bike. So let me know in the comments, and if you're new here or you haven't yet, consider subscribing down below so you make sure not to miss the next one. And how could I forget that if you wanted to buy anything from Fit or S&M, whether it's a Fit complete bike or a frame from S&M or anything in between, you can use the code on the screen. It's all caps, Brant, to save yourself 10% and help me out at the same time by using the description down below with that code. So thank you to Fit and S&M. Thank you for watching. Let me know what we're gonna upgrade next, and hopefully we'll see you there. Goodbye.